This whole fun zone discussion started with Doom Eternal and how they wanted to push you into it by holding you accountable. They saw the fun way that skilled FPS players were playing Doom 2016, using a lot of different guns instead of just abusing the power of one, which is honestly very Doom 1. You had to watch your ammo count and learn the utility of each weapon. That led to players using most of their available arsenal through the whole campaign. For Doom Eternal, they tightened the ammo counts and gave weapons more defined roles in battle. They introduced breakable enemy weapons and exploitable weaknesses to certain attacks. They pushed hard on the fun zone, and fans of the game championed that design decision. But it unfortunately led some fans to think way too simply about what the fun zone is, from the view of Doom Eternal. The fun zone is not literally defined as using a lot of gun variety. Otherwise, there would be no fun zone in games that aren't shooters. The fun zone is when you're engaging in the game's available systems that create the fun the developers have imagined. Take Ninja Gaiden, for example. There are a lot of different weapons in that game: Dragon Sword, the Double Swords, the Luna Staff, the Flail, the Claws, Nunchucks. But the fun zone isn't about switching around to use all of them. Rather, it's about picking the weapons that work for you, mastering your use of them, which in my case is always the sword or staff, and making those weapons work with your use of shurikens, hops, air throws, flying decapitations, ultimate charge attacks, magic attacks, dismemberment and executions, and various other aspects of the game. Saying to someone, "I beat Ninja Gaiden 2, but I only use the Dragon Sword most of the time," is not a valid criticism because it's not designed or balanced around weapon variety. This has been the main confusion surrounding criticism of Doom: The Dark Ages. I want to give you an example of what I'm talking about. There's a channel called Ragel, I think that's how you say it. Check it out, it's a good channel, give him a sub, tell him Mayo said hi. He's got a video on the Dark Ages and how the fun zone has changed. It's a good video, but it stumbles in the one area I'm talking about. I'm gonna show you what he said.
Doom: The Dark Ages is too slow. Doom: The Dark Ages is too easy. Doom: The Dark Ages is not Doom. These are some of the most common complaints you'll hear about the Dark Ages. And as a huge fan of Eternal, a lot of these criticisms are felt, and I understand where they come from. But I think we need to take a step back and ask ourselves if what we really mean to say is Doom: The Dark Ages is not Doom Eternal. Because if that's the case, then that is a totally fair and true assessment to make. There are no more weak points, kinda. There are no more glory kills, sort of. There is no more equipment launcher, sort of. And there is no more quick switching, sort of. In Doom Eternal, these were the core mechanics that defined the fun zone, and for most of us, it was absolutely peak. In Eternal, the combat was centered around high-flying mobility and lightning-quick weapon swapping. Doom: The Dark Ages reimagines that core combat loop into something slower, heavier, and more deliberate.
This is what I mean. It's really only that last bit I want to focus on. Some high-level Doom Eternal fans have the idea that the combat that defines Doom Eternal is this playstyle of flying high like a bird and abusing quick swap animation cancels to do PB rocket swaps. They'll see someone playing the game for their first time and tell them they're playing it wrong for not quick swapping. I'm not saying Ragel is that kind of person, I'm just quoting his video as an example of how some big fans, in my opinion, mistakenly describe the game's combat. Because that's how the dedicated players enjoy the game. But the vast majority, and I'm talking a very high percentage, simply played it once or a few times, like most people, and they too entered the fun zone. They came to understand the combat of Doom Eternal, and they did it without learning how to maintain airtime and do quick swap combos. That shit takes real practice. There are many players who still play Doom Eternal without doing that stuff. I didn't do it for months. I beat my first Ultra Nightmare run without even knowing about quick swap exploits. Speaking about all of us, our first time we played sloppy and we loved it, because the fun zone isn't about how the high-level strategies are executed. The fun zone, in Doom Eternal specifically, is about the management of resources, enemy prioritization, and generally using your different weapons to get the job done, whether you know about quick swaps or not. Mastering it led to crazy verticality and the high DPS weapon combos you see now. That's where it eventually took you, but it's not what makes Eternal the game that it is. I have a couple videos on that, I'll put the links below. There's this weird focus on what has been taken out in comparison to Doom Eternal, as if this is just Doom Eternal's gameplay again with stuff removed. Fans will say, "They took out the flame belch, that thing was awesome." Well, what was the flame belch? It was a flamethrower on your shoulder that recharged over time, and you used it to light enemies on fire, which would cause them to drop armor shards. You were in charge of restacking your armor during combat, and you'd strategically use groups of enemies to increase the armor from a single flame belch. The flame belch is gone from the Dark Ages. The knee-jerk reaction is to say, "They took out the flame belch, what the fuck?" The real way to look at it is to say, okay, so what am I doing instead? Well, I'm upgrading the combat shotgun to give me armor from each shot. I can choose to spec into that if I want and make it a central part of my playstyle. If I don't, I can spec into the flail, which is slower than the gauntlet and far less powerful, but yields armor from each direct hit and can be upgraded to create AoE splashes of armor like the flame belch. Or if I don't want either of them, I can spec into the ground fissure rune for the shield, getting armor from projectile parries. Or hell, use all three and become an armor farming machine. The active armor system is still there, it's just not a single flamethrower button on cooldown. There are different ways to build your playstyle focusing on armor gain in different ways. I think that's pretty cool. Do I think a shoulder-mounted flamethrower is more badass than a medieval flail? Yes, I do, but someone else will feel differently depending on their tastes. And I'm not going to come on here screaming about the absence of the flame belch when the game has given me several cool ways to customize my armor gain based on my playstyle. This is why I thought it was important to respond to the Actman's video, where he commented on stuff that was quote-unquote taken out or missing from the Dark Ages, without giving any real context or talking about what exists in its place. The most notable example being that he said there were no upgrades for the suit like in the previous games. Yeah, you can focus on that one fact that there are no literal suit upgrades, but you also have to consider that there are shield upgrades, melee upgrades, shield rune upgrades, all of which are new to the series. There's a new flow of new possibilities that people are simply overlooking or actively ignoring because they're so focused on what isn't there. Stay tuned, by the way, I have a 2-hour discussion video coming out soon between myself, the Actman, and Midnight, and it's going to be pretty good. So when we talk about the Dark Ages, and people say they miss quick swaps and the air mobility, and they didn't feel pressured to use all the guns, fine, it's okay to miss things, but people are trying to judge the Dark Ages fun zone by the exact parameters of Eternals, which doesn't work. Fun zones exist in all kinds of games, and they're very different. Football's fun zone has nothing to do with how many guns you use per second. The fun zone of the Dark Ages is way closer to Ninja Gaiden's than it is to Doom Eternal's, because we have different factors the game is built around. We have a multi-function shield at the center, we have 3 different types of melee that mold gameplay and an emphasis on faltering, 4 different shield runes, and all this comes together to create RPG-style builds around certain guns that work best for your playstyle as you upgrade them. Like Ninja Gaiden and the way that a single weapon works with the rest of your options, Doom the Dark Ages wants you to find your guns of preference and make the rest of your options complement it. That's what's supposed to be fun about this game, and if it's not fun for you, that's fine. But you can't judge it for not being a game it's not trying to be, and maybe a shift in perspective will help you find the fun. 'Cause at the end of the day, it sounds really silly to say, all I had to do to beat Doom the Dark Ages was shield toss, shield bash, block, parry, falter, melee, execute, regen armor, explore, upgrade, prioritize threats, and shoot a couple guns. It sounds really silly to say you were doing all that stuff, but then say that Doom the Dark Ages didn't push you into the fun zone. What you're really saying is it didn't make you play it like Doom Eternal or like a traditional shooter. You're hyper-focused on not being pushed into using all your guns and missing the bigger picture, even the somewhat of a genre change the game is. Now, balance is something that can be discussed. The game could be more challenging in spots, it could have better tuned weapon power and resources, there are input issues to resolve, weapon switching should probably feel less punishing. That's all true. I'm not going to claim it doesn't need work. But the game as it is, as it launched, absolutely gets you into the general fun zone they designed. And that's what we want, right? For a game to make us see what's supposed to be fun about it, even if that fun isn't ultimately for you? That's how we have to judge things. What is supposed to be fun about a game, and how does it get you to experience it? And once you have experienced it, do you like it enough to want to take it further and see what else the game offers? I see a lot of similar attitudes to people who didn't get Eternal. When people are like, all I'm doing against this Agadon Hunter is waiting for him to parry and get stunned so I can shoot him a bit. This is boring design. It reminds me so much of the Doom Hunter from Eternal, and saying he's boring because you have to use the plasma rifle to take down his shield before you can damage him. No, that is one option, and the microwave beam is pretty good for that, but you can use various tools to falter him, like a grenade or a heat blast, or you can freeze him, and then you can go in for a blood punch and a shotgun blast right to his base and do massive damage. If you can string together multiple falters, this guy can't even move, and you break his first phase in seconds. Now, the first time you play Doom Eternal, there's no way you're going to discover all that. It's impossible to teach such knowledge and skill so quickly. But the idea is that the game's fun should have gotten into your blood by the end of your first playthrough and sparked your curiosity enough to make you want to play it again, and learn and experiment and research, so you can get better and have even more fun. Maybe it takes a while to learn that there's a better strategy for killing an Arachnotron other than breaking his turret every single time you see him. But the presence of that breakable turret got you to become more familiar with quickly using precision weapons in the heat of battle, and that's a valuable skill to learn. If you get tired of it, maybe it's time to think more deeply about the mechanics on offer and find a better and more fun way to approach the situation. The Dark Ages is the same way. You're not going to find all the fun the first time. You're not going to realize how quickly you can actually take down an Agadon Hunter and how active you can be in the fight. When you play it the first time, you're going to freeze, you're going to get stuck leaning on one or two things in moments of pressure because you're not good enough to utilize everything that's available to you. That's what makes for good replayability in a combat-centric game like this. Depth. All they need is for you to generally get into the flow, feel out the mechanics, have a good time, and be curious enough to dive deeper and see the delicious smorgasbord of fun combat options that are actually there just under the surface. Not every fun zone is for everyone, and that's okay, but if you go into an open world RPG, you can't be upset it didn't make you play it like a hack and slash. I think people haven't been able to really see the Dark Ages for what it is because nothing like it has been made before. I've never seen a first-person shooter with shield options like this, with this style of melee and rules regarding faltering, with gun synergies that work like magic spells. If the Dark Ages didn't have all the other stuff you're supposed to do in addition to shooting guns, I would say it's a big failure that you can depend on just one or two of them. But it's not a typical shooter where guns are nearly everything and maybe you have a few other options to add in. This time around, shield, melee, and guns essentially have a shared level of responsibility. So keep in mind what the game actually is. Consider that maybe your own prejudices have sabotaged your enjoyment. And now that it's seen some difficulty updates and more balancing is to come, you might be able to jump back in and find the fun. I'm not saying it's perfect, I love it, but there are parts I don't like and I probably never will, but I see the fun in its design and that's got me hooked. Thanks for watching. This video is not meant as a call out of anyone, it's just a general response to a prevalent attitude. If you're a fan who's dealing with people constantly saying this stuff, I hope this video serves you well. Catch you guys later.